In 1978, BMW is approached by Lamborghini, and Lamborghini wants to partner with them on making what's called a homologation car. And so that was a sell it on Saturday, race it on Sunday type of thing, where if you could put 500 of these things on the road, you could race them at the exotic races around Europe. Well, that was great, and BMW was very receptive to that, but one problem. Lamborghini ran out of money in the late 70s, and so BMW went it all alone and developed their own high-end exotic car called the BMW M1. It had a unbelievable for its day 256 horsepower 6-cylinder motor, and in the subsequent years they wanted to find a home for that amazing motor, and the motorsports division was born, what BMW calls M in their product lineup. And the M5 comes out in 1986 and absolutely revolutionizes the car business. There had never been a perfectly balanced high-performance sedan like that in the whole wide world. And since then, each subsequent generation of M series, M5 cars, this is the F90 series, has been pretty much the best sedan in the whole wide world of sports sedans. And we're going to take a look under the hood and see where this M5 Competition differs from its predecessor. Now, this is a 2019 BMW M5 Competition. The Competition means it's different than a standard M5, and there are quite a lot of differences between this and the standard M5. A lot of times you'll see people go, that has 600 horsepower, this has 617 horsepower. They're hardly different. Yeah, they're really wrong. The cars are actually very, very different from one another. Starting with the motor, now this is a 4.4 liter 8-cylinder motor, and so you go, oh, I get it, it's a twin turbo, it's the same as the X5 motor. Believe it or not, it's a different motor, not a different version of that motor, it's a different motor. That's the N63 series motor, where this is the S63 series motor. The X5, for example, has 2,900 pounds per square inch fuel injectors, where this car has 5,000 PSI fuel injectors, which is unbelievably high. Why you benefit from having fuel injectors that put out that much intensity? Well, just go water your lawn. If you let the hose go drip out, it comes out at one level, put your thumb over it, and it comes at a totally different kind of pressure. Same applies to fuel injectors. You want that mist to get in and get out of there very, very quickly. If it pours more slowly, the problem is that the liquid gas aggregates on the cylinder wall lining. Well, that's not high performance, that's the opposite. So the most intense way you can atomize that gas is going to get you maximum performance, and that's what this has. But because of that, it burns really hot, and so in the competition package, as opposed to the standard M5, everything in the fuel delivery system has been coated with very high capacity temperature threshold applications throughout. Also, the X5 has a little bit more than 11 PSI turbos, and so pounds per square inch in a turbo determines how much power can be rushed back into the engine. Well, over 11 pounds per square inch is actually really, really high. That's why the X5 is so powerful. The M5 is 25.9 PSI. It's unbelievably high. You'll never come across, even custom exotic cars don't have that high of a PSI. And so to reinforce the engine, it has cross-bolted main bearings to make sure that the engine itself doesn't come undone, because it's handling a tremendous amount of power. Not only does it have 617 horsepower, it has 553 pound-feet of torque. So BMW went to probably the single best transmission in the whole wide world, and so that's the ZF8 HP transmission. You've heard me talk about that before. It's the single best transmission that there is, and we'll talk more about it as we walk around. Now, taking a look throughout the engine, one thing about it is that it sits on motor mounts that are different than the standard M5. In fact, they're 55% stiffer. Well, it gets to a point where you might as well just drill the engine and bolt it straight to the frame. It's going to be a miserable experience. However, BMW has figured out a way to make it actually quite comfortable despite having such aggressive motor mounts. Taking a look at the wheels are different on the Competition than they are on the standard M5. In fact, they're 6.6 pounds lighter than the standard M5 wheel. That concept is called unsprung weight, the weight that dangles, so to speak, if the car were hanging. Well, saving weight And the unsprung department is the single best weight that you can save. The second best thing you could save is what's called rotational weight, and that would be the brakes. So you'll see a lot of people like the idea of the carbon ceramic brakes because they shave over 40 pounds off. However, not everybody likes the squeaky nature of carbon ceramic brakes, so that's a choice that you're going to need to make for yourself. The front suspension in the M5 Competition, the links have been shortened, so there's less up and down in this car, and then the whole car sits 7 millimeters lower than a standard M5. Let's jump inside. Well, inside, you can imagine it's otherworldly fabulous. Amazing stereo system, fabulous steering wheel, everything about it just looks mind-blowingly beautiful. It does have paddle shifters, but bear in mind, this ZF 8 HP transmission, BMW themselves was touting for years that the dual clutch transmission was the future, and I've been saying for years I think the dual clutch transmission it doesn't make any sense. I've never understood why people thought that was a positive. I get it, a lot of you are very passionate about that transmission. I just think it's ridiculous. I don't think it makes any sense. You either have a manual transmission or an automatic transmission. Something in between doesn't make any sense to me. I don't care what they race in Formula One. The ZF 8 HP does two things extremely well, and that's why you're seeing it in Rolls-Royce and in Aston Martin and even the maximum high-performance cars from Dodge, the Hellcat and the Demon, is that it gets great gas mileage. It actually gets 11% better gas mileage than even its own 6-speed variation. This car gets 15 miles per gallon in the city and 21 on the highway. That may not sound like a lot, but this is a 4,300 pound car with all-wheel drive and 617 horsepower. To average 17 miles per gallon is absolutely amazing. The benefit of dual clutch, as people have touted it, is that the dual clutch shifts quickly. Well, the 8 HP shifts in 200 milliseconds. It's unbelievably fast shifting out of a standard automatic transmission that's built to handle a ton of power. The other thing it can do that a DCT can't is it can go from 8th gear all the way down to 2nd gear all at once in dramatic transitions. Let's jump in back. So the wheelbase on this is over 117 inches, so it's actually a really big car. Where you feel that is in the back seat. What if you have 5 adults and they're all 6 feet tall? Well, I'm 6 feet tall and 180 pounds, and I have all the comfort going on in the world. Tons of headroom even in the back seat, tons of arm and shoulder room. It's just a big, luxurious car. There's no other way to say it. Let's jump in back. The other thing you'll notice, I'm gonna pop the trunk. The brakes, whatever you get, are absolutely fabulous. So this car goes from 70 miles an hour to 0 miles an hour in 147 feet, which is like buckle the asphalt below you fast. To put that in perspective, a purpose-built super exotic like the Ferrari 812 Superfast does it in 142 feet, but it doesn't have a 19 cubic foot trunk. It doesn't have a generous a room for 3 in the back. You can't go to Costco in your Ferrari and then stop by the dry cleaners on the way home. The M5 Competition is a real high-performance car, but it's also a real great daily driver. 19 cubic foot trunk, that's as much space as a lot of sport utilities have behind the back seat. Also, this has a different exhaust system than the standard M5, and so the exhaust sounds fabulous on a standard M5. It just sounds even a little throatier on the M5 Competition.
We have before.
Taking a look at the side, well, it's certainly one of the most desirable looking cars on the road and one of the prettiest sedans that you could possibly buy. This Grigio Pearl color is a really particularly good looking color, kind of a smoke gray with that carbon fiber roof. It's as good looking as a sedan's going to be in the modern world. Let's jump inside and take a peek. So the world is yours when it comes to optioning out your M5. The ones you're going to find at the dealership are going to have every option in the world. This is a limited production car that the dealers are going to order them fully loaded. There's just no other way to say it. You'd be hard pressed to find one that isn't. I'm going to guess you're going to want it that way. You know, people are going to say, well, what if I got a radio delete or, you know, something crazy, because it is a real track car that's going to be an absolute track superstar. This car goes 0 to 60 in 3.1 seconds per BMW. But I'm telling you right now, there is not a reviewer in the world that's reviewed this car that's done anything other than 2.8 seconds from 0 to 60, which is just otherworldly fast. I mean, this is the fastest 0 to 60 sedan you're ever going to drive in your entire life. Under 3 seconds is absolutely nuts. But like I talked about with the M1, the M1 was a particularly limited production car, and now the value of that car is blow your mind expensive. That's the case for every one-off BMW forever. And so BMW actually made an M-Series station wagon very briefly many years ago, and it's worth a great fortune. The Z8 was built in limited numbers. It's worth a great fortune. The competition is really a different car than the standard M5. Don't let the little horsepower deviations fool you. The differences are profound. The front suspension links, they've been shortened to make it tighter in the front. The toe link bushings in the back have been removed and there's ball joints in their place. It's a different kind of experience, more visceral, more powerful, more wonderful. But for the buyer of this car, more rare and more special. This is the kind of car that you hang on to for years and years and be glad you did. I have a feeling this is going to be one of the single most valuable BMWs years from now that BMW has ever made. And if you have any questions about it, please feel free to reach out to me. My name is Joe Tunney. You can reach me anytime at joeloveshawaii@gmail.com.